Testing. 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 Test. Hello?
Hello?
Testing.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Testing. Alexa, volume 1.
better. Yo, yes, okay. Hello?
Gary,
Hiya.
how are you, mate?
I'm good, how are you?
Very good. How's everything?
Yeah, this is, I don't know if I'm like nervous or something.
You'll be fine. No stress. All right. You're in server, so you're like light years ahead of everyone else already. So we're sweet. Normally it takes 15 minutes to get into the server, so we're good.
Okay.
First question is,
Yeah.
give me a bit of background on racing history, like sim racing or any racing really, it doesn't really matter. You know, what you're trying to achieve, what you've been doing. Also helpful to know what gear you're running, like sim gear,
Yep.
and yeah, and then we'll kind of crack on from there.
Okay. I'm 37, but when I was a kid, I did indoor karting. But that was a every Saturday thing. I've had wheels on the Xbox and stuff for years, but for the last couple of years, I've switched to PC, and probably for the last year been on ACC.
Nice.
On a couple of leagues, a Sunday night and a Monday night, but I seem to I do quite well, but when you're qualifying, I'm still a good 4 seconds off of the people on pole.
Roger.
If I can just what I was reading from the coaching is it's not brake here, this gear. It's more just about your race craft.
Yeah, we don't rate sim coaching in general is targeted at like, oh, okay, so we're here at Barcelona. I'm going to fucking teach you how to be rapid at Barcelona. We're not really about that. Like, both Dave and I, almost all the guys, but you know, we come from a very different background where we teach people to drive rather than teach people to be faster to track.
I want the skills to transfer to
exactly
all
everywhere.
races. Yeah, not
exactly. So we like I want to focus on driving, and to be honest, like there's a fair bit of talking and maybe not as much driving as you initially think, because wrapping your head around the ideas and bits and pieces that we try and teach takes a bit of time. We may not get to racecraft and stuff, which is something that we can touch on at a later date, but that will come a bit more naturally when you find your own kind of rhythm and speed. So
that's good.
That's cool.
Because the wife has already said she wants to get me another session, so I said I would check that it wouldn't just be a repeat of whatever the first.
Nah. We build. Everything's building. So we start, like, it depends what level you're at too. Like we've had guys that are really strong, like fucking pants me, and then guys that are like absolutely nowhere. And so the ground zero is for me effectively the same. Like we work on the same things, whether you're at 0 or 100 or 99.5, and it's just kind of whether you're trying to take big chunks or small chunks. The end result is, for me, is still the same thing. So no stress on that front. We just build from where we are and what we've got.
Gear wise.
Yeah, shoot.
I've got a set of, I think they're V1 Club Sport Fanatec pedals.
Okay, no load cell in them, right?
There is, but I actually I just hate the brake. I got these second hand off of someone, and the brake seems a bit hit and miss. So I've actually been using the clutch as the brake instead.
Okay. So one of the things I was going to say is in options controls. The brake gamma is in advanced.
Hang on.
It's alright. No, cool. The brake gamma is like it's a number. I think it goes like 1 to 5 or 1.01. Do you
want me to change the brake to be the brake instead of the clutch?
No. I think stick with what you know, but just giving you a bit of feedback. Like that goes from like 1 to 5 in single decimal places. I don't understand it, but that is effectively like you have it on 1 if you've got a load cell, and then if you don't have a load cell, you put it on a higher number, so it gives you like more travel, if that makes sense. It's a weird thing. So if you've got it on like number 5, but you've got a load cell, then you've got like this stupid amount of travel that doesn't make sense, which is why it could feel a bit odd, or it could just be that the brake's shit and you don't like it and use the clutch, in which case either doesn't really bother me.
I was trying to learn to trail brake, and because I don't know how these pedals are set up, but there is just no movement in that brake pedal at all.
Okay.
I first thought it was the sponge or rubber or whatever's inside it was deteriorated, so the guy I bought them off replaced all that, but it still doesn't move enough for me. So, I mean, I think I'd actually prefer my old Logitech ones. My wheel is just a Logitech Xbox G920. It's got, rather than the original round rim on it, it's got a 3D printed GT wheel on it.
Yep.
And probably where I spend all of my money is actually the aluminium frame. So I've got a surge platform to slide backwards and forwards, and 4 actuators in the corners.
Okay, cool.
So I tend to say to people that I think that I can feel more of what's going on than I can, but like before you would normally hear or see traction loss, I can feel it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, cool. That's right. So we shall see how we get on and go from there. But yeah, anyway, that's worth looking at on the brake side, or with trying it at a later point, depending on what the pedal is. Like I've never used a club board, so I can't can't say like what setting you should run, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's one thing that in particular to look at. All right, quickly to start, jump in setup, aggressive setup,
Well, I've
electron.
got all of the CDA ones for this car.
Nah, don't use it, and I'll tell you why in a second.
Okay.
Yeah,
Aggressive, yeah.
just aggressive setup. Just turn the ABS to 2.
Hang on,
In electronics,
ABS to 2, yep.
and then in fuel and strategy, put fuel at 35 liters.
Yep.
And front and rear brakes, which is just under that at 1.1, which is the hard pads.
Yep.
And then that's it.
Okay.
So what we're going to do now is literally just drive. The one thing I will say is you might have to turn the master volume down to still hear me, because the game is loud. So if you need to do that now before we get going.
Seems okay at the moment.
All right, cool. So when we're ready, you're right to go. And what we're going to do is literally just like 2 or 3 laps to start with here. And the idea is just for you to do like 2-3 pretty cash laps at like your 80-90%. I'm on track because it seems to be a bit less daunting for everyone than me kind of sitting on their shoulder watching them.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a menace, but it's fine. So yeah, first lap just kind of warm up. Cool, and just run like 2 laps for me. Bit of back track up the inside there.
Yeah. I'd normally
Sorry,
take that a lot tighter.
Didn't mean to wind you up, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Cool, do one more for me.
Okay.
Hello.
For the Sunday league, we had to do 3 consecutive clean laps around here and submit our average time. And I was doing
For qualifying?
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it was to put you in the class. Like,
The split, yep.
And I was doing 147s around here mainly.
Okay. That's right, that's half race. This is a good starting point. Biggest drama is that, and the little snap oversteers that you get on the exit, which are obviously exaggerated because you're in the shitbox setup. And which is exactly the reason I use it, because it shows everything at a much lower level.
Okay.
Otherwise you can go a lot quicker without having that snap. That snap's still there, but this kind of just shows faster. See that one there, like that oversteer?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna clean all that stuff up, and that I'm gonna clean up that little bit of driving
Car on the
to
right.
stop dickheads like me being able to do this.
Clear on the right.
And focus a bit more on exits. Cool. Alright, so just cross the line and then crack on. Don't worry, we'll go slow. Alright, so 3 things. I know like some of them will feel like I'm telling you things you already know, but I don't really care because I like kind of kicking off like square one with everyone, and then either we build it up really quickly off that because it all makes sense and you know it, or you know there are little bits and pieces there that still need to be worked on, and that way we never miss kind of like a basic that you know eventually if you come back or whatever we try and build on something, but that little bit's missing, that you always kind of never keep making steps forward if like one of the basic sort of principles is always missing, if that makes sense. So 3 rules, more like 2.5, and then a whole bunch of like follow-on stuff. And don't worry, like there's a lot of talking. If you don't take it all in, don't worry, I'll send it to you after.
Oh,
if I sound like a knob and you really don't get what I'm saying, then you know I'm very Australian, so feel free to ask, and I can repeat it a different way. Like there's so many different ways to skin a cat when it comes to this. So you know, easy to kind of build it, but I'm pretty spot on with it, I hope, nowadays. First one is vision. And so, like you touched on it before, like you got a little bit of feeling and whatever, but the big thing with our vision is if you imagine that I threw you a football and you had your eyes closed until the ball was like 2-3 meters in front of your face, and then you had to kind of react to that and, you know, then catch it or dodge it or whatever, you know what I mean? Like that's a very quick reaction. In terms of driving, like how does that apply to driving? It's effectively the same thing. Like if I was to come here and then say, okay, I see the corner brake, right now I see the apex, I'm turning, and then okay, the next brake, okay, and then like the next apex, and see how like I'm sort of always kind of just reacting to what I see over and over again. And so that becomes very reactive. I start to not use the car the way it should be driven, and so I make the platform like a lot more unstable. I don't position the car in kind of the best, so I maybe not use all the track. So that reactive driving style kind of creates like its own little intricacies where you're kind of fighting yourself, and you always feel like you're on the limit because you're always seeing something and doing something as you kind of see it. But the reality is, like, it's very easy for me to say you've just got to lift your vision and see a little bit more. But if you're looking a lot further up the road and you take in a lot more of the corner, you're able to kind of open the car up, think about where the car's going, and actually kind of predict and preempt where the car ends up, and sort of position the car a lot better to then use a lot more of the road, be able to squeeze on the throttle a little bit earlier because you know you're going to hit the exit at the right spot and things like that. That also will clean up a lot of this snap oversteer, because when your eyes are down, you tend to get some of these bad boys because you don't end up opening the wheel and coming out of the corner with as like unwinded wheel as much as what you can, and you don't use as much road. So that's kind of the end result of vision. And kind of, so you know, if you come through here, you know, start to get on the throttle but you're still turning, and you come out, you don't use all the road, you have like that big snap there, and so that happens at a few places for you. It's different reasons, but vision is one related. So that's where
thing a bit smoother.
Exactly, and understand kind of your speed a little bit more. So not just to kind of use a bit more road, not just to kind of make it cleaner, but the reason we use our vision is because we drive the car with our eyes, not our hands. And so if you imagine, like as you said it perfectly, right? You've got a bit of movement, so you feel the thing going underneath you, but still what that doesn't move is yaw. So you don't, and so what you miss in terms of like driving a real car is you miss the feeling of speed, you miss the feeling of deacceleration. So you might have that shift in the bump and a little bit of a slide, but you miss that core feeling, and I call it an R sensor. You're missing your R sensor in the simulator because all you got is the screen in front of you. So using our vision in the sim, what we need to do is lift it up a little bit more, see a lot more of the corner, because then that creates depth perception. We then use our peripheral vision a lot more, and that creates kind of an artificial art sensor as well. So you start to get a feeling for like whether the car's moving too much underneath you, judging by like where your eyes are and where the car's pointed. So it's sort of two-pronged, not just kind of opening the car up, using a lot more of the road, but also understanding the car's characteristics, and it also builds us into kind of point two. So vision is multiple aspects, the biggest being that you want to see everything in one sort of square opening, so that you can use as much of the road as you can and open the car up and carry flow and flow the car and carry mid-corner speed, because effectively time is made by carrying mid-corner speed and getting off the corner as well as you can. So does most of that make sense? I know it's kind of like multiple aspects, but it's a big point.
Yeah, no, I think I got it.
So we'll build on it, so don't worry, like that's just kind of a base understanding. The second point, which kind of builds on that first, is reference points. So a lot of people say like, yep, I've got a reference point for braking, I brake here. The reason I call them reference points and not braking is because, like for instance at that hairpin, depending on whether I've got old tyres, new tyres, wet, track condition, fuel levels, depends on whether I brake at the same point or not. So I have a brake reference, but I might brake sort of plus or minus 10 meters depending on what point that is, depending on what car I'm driving. Like you can imagine that I try and drive the same car as like you guys in the session, so you kind of see it one-to-one, and I'll drive 10 different cars a day sort of thing. So for me, like a reference point is so flexible. Maybe not as flexible for you guys, but you have to be understanding that if you change track or change car in game, that those reference points are going to adjust to kind of suit different variables. And so that's one part of reference points. The second part of reference points, and for me almost the more important, is I like to call them the ABCs. So A being your brake point, B being your minimum speed point in the corner, so not necessarily an apex but a minimum speed, and C being the exit. So what I like to build in my mind, or have in my mind sort of rock solid, is my ABC. So for instance, my brake point here is like right here on the curb. My minimum speed point is actually deep on the curb here, and my C point is like the Audi Sport sign up on the above me, sort of right there. So what I'm doing with those ABCs is not only kind of having those reference points, so here it's late and the exit is the sausage curb here. So what those references are actual visual references for me. So brake at the end of the curb, looking for basically straight away the end of the building, like up on the right, the edge of the hill, and then the GT World Challenge side. So what that does is forces me to lift my vision towards certain points. So my reference point's the 100, I'm looking at the apex, and then now I'm looking towards the yellow sausage at the end of the corner, and bang, that's where my car ends up. So see how I use my vision to put the car exactly where I want it. Here I'm looking at the second hump, and then I'm looking at the orange marker on the fence up on the left as I come off here, and then that's how I end up using on the road. Same here, I brake.
Guilty of pretty much only looking a car length in front of me and on the track.
Exactly, and so here looking for the end of the yellow sausage, because that's where I want the car to end up as I drive off, so I can open it up. And again, looking towards kind of the grandstand or the bridge on the main straight as I come around the last corner. So what does that do, like having reference points like that? Well, one, it builds consistency, so like braking point consistency, and then if I start to be consistent, like one of my favorite sayings is consistency builds speed. Because once I start to be consistent, I know where I can go a little bit faster, so then I can adjust my braking, whether I trail more, trail less, get on the throttle earlier, exit, blah, blah, blah.
See, I let
brake
off.
less, brake earlier.
I let off for this one, and it's when I see the second orange bit on the left that I then try to go quicker to come out further.
Cool. We'll touch on it. We'll kind of build your own in a second. Just let me build through this if you can. No, it's perfect. Like you're on it, but we just kind of want to build it up the right way. That's all.
Yeah.
So the reference points build consistency in terms of braking, and then the visual build that forced vision up, which gives you the flow that you're after with the car and allows you to use all the road and stop you from having these little snaps on the exit where you try and fight the car and not use all of the road. So that's point number 2. And the last one, so you can see how they're both sort of very encompassing together. So vision rules all, and it related to kind of everything you do, and everything I talk about will have like a vision element to it 100%, because driving is 100% a visual feel exercise, and you have not as much feeling as what you want, and so that's why the vision becomes even more important on the sim. And the final point is to not pick the throttle up before you hit your minimum speed. So for instance, if I was to come in here and I'm not looking at the exit, or I don't see the exit, and I get on the throttle, see how I run off. Same here, I'm not looking at the yellow sausage at the exit, I try and get on the throttle beforehand and I run out of road. So you want to make sure that you can see the exit before you get on the throttle. So whether that's a predicted exit, like you said, the orange marker on the fence at turn 3 exit, or whether it's like at the actual exit, like you can look at the exit of turn 1 here at the apex of turn 2, for instance, you can see where you're going. It can be 2 things, but you want to make sure that it's not too early, because if you're starting to get on the throttle too early and you're running wide, then you're having a poor exit and starting to have a bit of a snap here. So it's why we make sure that we've got our visual reference points and we build them through. So to give you an idea, here's a really quite a cool one. This is the next corner, turn 4. Break point is the white line just before the Repsol bridge. So just here, I'm looking through the corner to find the Repsol signs. When I see the yellow truck is when I start to get on the throttle, and then I'm looking at the bridge up above me, and see how you end up kind of using all the road here. So looking late apex, then out towards the Audi Sport sign, and I open the car up and I accelerate kind of as the car straightens up and points to it. So you can see how those reference points kind of allow you to kind of like a kid's point to point, like dot to dot drawing, 1, 2, 3, 4. You basically draw the whole track like that with just reference points. And the reason it's really structured is because initially it forces you to lift your eyes, and then as you become more comfortable, that will slowly drop and just be you kind of looking at the track and predicting where the track is. But for the early part, actually creating like a real clinical driving style like this will help you kind of build and transition that visual aspect, because you're not kind of born with depth perception and vision, especially on a computer screen. You learn to develop it, and so this is kind of effectively ground zero, if that makes sense.
It already just sort of following you and trying to do some of it. I'm not even looking at the track, I'm just pointing the car at those exit signs, and I'm using the runoff and not actually going off.
Yep,
so
exactly.
It's working. I can tell. I get what you mean.
So what we're going to do now is I'm going to crack on a bit, and what I want you to do is keep your eyes firmly fixed on my rear bar. That's going to feel really horrible and awkward, and you'll make a few mistakes. Don't stress. I'm going to build that gap a tiny bit on you, but I just want you to fix your eyes on the arse end of my Aston. 2 laps, sort of just like this. First lap's going to be awkward as hell. Second lap should get a little bit easier. thing.
Right on, mate. The fastest lap
Just
so far.
lock in, one more lap like this. Oh, how did that feel?
Yeah, that's okay. Still, there's a few corners where I still did it wrong and I wasn't paying attention properly.
Yeah, it just drop your vision.
Yeah.
Cool. It didn't seem to like run wide or anything anywhere, which is kind of the normal parameters. It's like on some of the longer corners, you'll tend to like run wide because they're following with their eyes a little bit, so they kind of miss that sort of natural turn in phase as well. So it just means that your hands and eyes are probably more connected than what you think. It's just about kind of maybe building better reference points and joining the dots kind of a little bit better, for lack of a better term. So, all right, that's cool. So that's basically just a real basic vision exercise to get you understanding, like, you know, the feeling of kind of lifting your vision and what it can do. So in reality, like that second, or you know, give or take about a second that I was ahead, is more or less me at an apex where you're at brake zone. So just an automatic kind of, you know, look into exactly where you need to be, more or less looking to kind of see that next step through the corner, and that's effectively what we want to build. So in the back end of this, in the back end of the final sector here, I'll just run you through kind of like how I think about kind of driving. So got my brake marker about the 100, top of the 100, looking at the apex, now the end of the yellow sausage, drive it off. When the car's pointed to it, cut this first one, brake when I get to the apex of the second one, look through the corner. When I see the orange marker, start to get on the throttle, drive off. Brake when I see the top of the red sausage, looking at the GT World Challenge sign, brake underneath it. First curb, looking for the yellow sausage at the end of the final corner, drive off, and then looking for the bridge on the start finish line, basically, and then cruise the last corner. So see how like, so see how it's just kind of, I'm always just one step ahead. And so that's kind of effectively what we want to almost create for you in your own mind when you're driving. You know, you don't have to necessarily do it out loud because it's a lot, and you'll figure that out pretty quickly. Like, it's a pretty big cognitive load to take in all that information and output it. But effectively what we're trying to create is when you have like reference points and braking points and things like that, like locked into your mind, if you make a mistake, i.e. like brake too early or brake too late, and you know like the exact speed you were kind of carrying in because you know how you got through the previous corner, and you know exactly where you broke, to fix it for the next lap is just to simply brake a couple of meters earlier or later, or you know, that kind of distance. So if you braked a bit early and you pulled the car up here, so it was a bit too slow and you wanted your minimum speed to be here, well then that sort of 5-10 meters that you were too early is the 5 or 10 meters you need to brake a bit later, right? So if you knew exactly where you broke, then it's a very small adjustment to kind of push that 10 meters further forward. Same if you kind of miss the apex by this much there, and you have a kind of scrappy exit because of it, well then same thing, like what you missed the apex by, like that 5 meters, just bring the brake marker back 5 meters, and then you kind of fix that entry, and then that kind of fixes the corner, and then the lap time will come when you start to get the feeling for like where you can squeeze a little bit more. But the consistency and being consistent with like all your reference markers and everything we spoke about there is literally just about kind of creating this line, this map in your mind that puts you to that point, and using the reference points builds the consistency. You start to understand like if I'm doing something wrong, how to adjust for it on the fly without having to like, you know, go back and look at data or look at your own video or blah blah blah. You know, you start to do it in the car, so you're fixing your driving from lap to lap.
Yep.
And then that's effectively what will help you evolve through sessions and, you know, kind of get quicker on any run rather than just kind of cranking on, you know, lap after lap after lap, kind of hitting, always being in the glass ceiling, if that makes sense. Cool. So what we're going to do now is I want you to take over and just start to go.
Clear on the right.
We won't have much fuel left, that's fine. And just kind of first lap here, just start to find some of your own reference points and start to get a feeling for where you're driving, what you're doing. Go till we run out of fuel, talk about like 1 or 2 more things, and then go out again.
I've got some line damage on the front.
Just stop, it'll be for good. So,
I was going to say that was probably the easiest corner to achieve what you were saying on it because of the sign above me.
yeah, I actually kind of, to be fair, there's like, I try and just pick 3 because it's simple, but the reality is like you can kind of break it down even more. Like there, as you hit like the apex or like the minimum point in the corner, you kind of like, you don't see, unless you're kind of really looking through, you don't see that sign. So there's actually an orange marker on the fence, like at the end of the green curb.
Right.
So it's like that can be like a buy point to get you there. So you can kind of look at that and then look at the sign as it kind of open up to it. So, you know, it's not like a, you know, this is very like, think of it as kind of like, this is a bit like art, you know, it's very like, oh, this is my own style and how I do it. And, you know, everyone's kind of got their own take on it.
Yeah.
And the core fundamentals are going to be the same, but how you apply it becomes very personalized. And that's why, like, I can give you like every single brake marker on almost every single track that I've driven on. But the reality is, like, where I see me braking at the 100 might be you thinking that you're braking at the 90, you know what I mean? Or the 120, depending on kind of, you know, where you sit in the car or kind of your speed of vision and whatever. So that's why it's important to like take, you know, don't be afraid to kind of take 2 steps back, reset everything in your own mind, and then kind of build up on that rather than trying to hit the ground running plus kind of do all of this at the same time. So there's 2 more things that I want to touch on really quickly before we crack on. One's free time and one is shortcutting the track. Free time is simple. Think of like the final chicane, really slow corner where you can like get a really good exit or a really shit exit. And that leads you, if you look at the track map, like all the way down to the front chute, which is like nearly a third of the track. So, you know, little things like getting a really good exit out of that final chicane can win you half a second or lose you half a second. So look for places where you can win free time. Right. That being 1 out of 1 and 2 is a really good one, because if you carry that speed up to 3, you carry it through 3 and all the way out to 4. And again, when you stretch it out, like that's a massive part of the track as well. And then the final one is the left-hander at the bottom of the hill, and then you come up into turn 9. So the fast right, basically. So that exit is not only uphill, but it's also quite slow, like second gear. And so it's big drive up the hill. That speed you carry up the hill carries you through the right. So the faster you're going in, the faster you kind of roll through it. And then that exit speed carries you all the way down to the brake zone for the hairpin. And so if you kind of just take like those 3 exits, like that's 2/3 of the track effectively, right? So, you know, if you look for kind of free time on different tracks, like Bathurst is a real easy one, like out of turn 1, out of the elbow, like the lead up and down, like the massive long straights. But, you know, even breaking down more, like the last corner in Snetterton that leads you all the way out that kind of main drag, you know, that's kind of a lot of free time to be made there. So think about like where you can make a little bit of free time as well, and what corners maybe you owe a little bit more concentration to, or a bit more focus on, particularly the exit. And then the second one I wanted to say was shortcutting. Probably a bad term because it's not necessarily shortcutting, but make the track as short as possible. So if you've got the ability, like a really good example is turn 1 or 2, where you can cut the green on both the right and the left and make the track shorter. If you were to kind of like try and brake 5 meters later but end up driving around the curb, whereas I brake 5 meters earlier but I can turn earlier, I cut those two and shortcut basically from turn 1 to turn 3. If I end up driving like 30 meters less than you, then that's like 30 meters less I have to drag the car around the track. And if I can do that at 3 or 4 corners, you know, that's 50, 100 meters at, you know, 4 corners at 20 meters a corner sort of thing. You know, if we imagine that the track's like a 4.6k drag race and I'm doing 4.5 because I cut shit a little bit more, then I'm always going to win that race. You know what I mean? So think about like getting the car, if you can, and not always you can, but if you can get the car turned in earlier and do a lot of the hard work early rather than trying to like do it all late and like load the car in the middle of the corner when it's already going slow and you're scrubbing it more and slowing the car down the middle of the corner and then maybe not doing enough on the exit. If you can do more of that stuff early, then you're always going to roll a little bit faster through the middle of the corner and get on the throttle better out of the corner as well. So just
I think I know what you mean, because I did Monza recently with a friend, and I was braking earlier for turn 1, but I was carrying more speed through it and keeping the revs higher so I could exit faster.
Which corner, sorry, were you saying?
Monza, turn 1.
Oh yeah, turn 1, the first chicane.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I was able to, what seemed like exit quicker. He was braking later and basically coming to a stop.
Yep.
Whereas I was travelling, sort of, even if I was coasting a bit, it was still quicker than what he was doing.
So Monza's a real unique one, but like you can think of this in any sort of circumstance, right? The final chicane here is also quite common like that. So Monza chicane 1 and 2, and where's another good one? Where's another really good example of this? I was thinking about it the other day. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But if we take like those chicanes for instance, Zandvoort, there's a couple as well. It might look like 2 corners, but it's 1. So you want to brake, like you still have your ABC, right? You have your brake point, your minimum speed, and your exit. It's just your minimum speed is after the first apex, if that makes sense. So your minimum speed is actually at turn 2, so that and your minimum speed is basically the earliest point that you can get back on the throttle and get drive off the corner. So I brake as late as I can at Monza to carry speed through the first apex, and I continue braking to the second part of the corner, and then I drive it off. So it's effectively like making it 1 corner rather than 2. Because if I was Le Mans it's not on the game, but Le Mans is another one where the chicanes on the Mulsanne are the same. Like they're long entries in, but if you kind of brake for the first apex and then try and drive to the second part of the apex, then you're making 2 corners. But if I can shortcut that and make it 1 and carry speed to the second apex, or you know the minimum speed or the second apex, the minimum speed of the corner where I can get back on the throttle, then I'm carrying a little bit more speed across that first one. Now it's not always possible, and at Monza you do kind of just crack the throttle a little bit to kind of just give you a little bit of a push into that next part of the corner. But if you take that philosophy with you and you create 1 corner rather than 2, it will help you in the future. So Zolder's got chicanes like that. Le Mans 1. Or else Mazzano's got kind of corners like that as well that look like 2 corners, but you can kind of cruise it into 1. A lot of the double rights that they've got.
Do you mean just chicanes, or do you mean corners where, like the last turn on Monza is kind of like a sharp 90, but then it opens up to be bigger?
Yep. It's more or less effectively the same thing. Like, so instead of like stopping the car for that first part of the right, your minimum speed is actually a lot deeper. Like if you look at the track map here, this is why I love this track, because here's like a really classic example. Like turn 4 here, you have your apex point like super late in the corner, because if you brake for that, like where you just touch the apex first, then you're going to be picking the throttle up before you even like remotely close to seeing the exit. So it's about carrying speed in, knowing where your B point is, like where your minimum speed is, and your minimum speed, like as a reference, will always be just before you can get back on the throttle. So if you think you're like at turn 4 there, if you think you get to the middle of the corner and like that's your minimum and you start to get on the throttle, but you realize the corner keeps turning, well then naturally your minimum speed's like way too early, which means you can either brake later or lighter to get you deeper into the corner, so your minimum speed's much later, so you're pointed in the right direction. That one where I told you could stick a Mack truck up the inside of you, like that's another really solid example of somebody who like brakes to a point, realizes they've overslowed it, comes off the brake, but then rolls away from the apex, and then ends up actually getting on the throttle later, even though they were slowed up earlier, because you've had to do like double the amount of work. Whereas I fire the car in there and just like trail the brake like all the way through the corner until I see that orange marker on the exit, and then bang, I accelerate in one go. So you should never have 2 stabs on the throttle. It should always just be kind of one application. There's always exceptions to a rule, but in generally speaking, you know, one minimum speed will basically kind of do it for you, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense. And so the faster the corner, the earlier you do it, the better, especially if there's a big exit. So like turn 3, like you can see how long turn 3 is. I try and do my rotation really early, because then I'm on the throttle for longer. If you do it really late, then you're on the throttle on the exit a shorter time, so you actually lose speed on the long run. And same with like turn 9.
It's a good spot to overtake people there, even on the outside, because everyone takes that corner differently.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when you're not to your level, but when you're racing with the sort of people I race, none of us are really very experienced.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a good spot. What was I going to say? So what we'll do now, if you're cool, then I'll let you fire out and find a couple of those reference points on your own, start to get a feeling, and I'm just going to sit on your shoulder and tell you, effectively, it's going to feel like a lot. I'm just going to say like, oh, you could have done this, or that was a bit slow, that was a bit fast, and just kind of get you thinking like, oh yeah, Matt, that was a bit slow, or oh no, it didn't feel slow, but he's saying it's slow, so maybe I need to think about that, and it'll feel like a lot, and you'll probably go slower, which is fine. It's just kind of like engaging you with different kind of inputs.
So same setup that we've been running?
Yeah, cool. Just go straight away like this. Cool. And first lap, just kind of building, cruising on your own. a bit more road to use out there. Like, don't be afraid to kind of use like all that green. But so in your mind, just like already have locked in where you're braking. By the time you get to the brake point, eyes already on the apex. Now second apex. Now at the Pirelli sign at turn 3. Lift. And go. So you're trying to have like a really little lift and kind of like end up having to get back on the throttle earlier. Don't be afraid to have a bigger lift and later, and don't be afraid to get back on the throttle earlier. To open the wheel, use all the roads. Good. That's it. Roll and drive it off when you see that orange marker. So see how you've come out in the middle? So just change your marker or open the wheel with your eyes a bit more. That's a bit late. That's the problem when we're talking about a previous corner and you come into the next one. But that's like also good, like cognitive load to try and be like thinking about something else coming up as well as behind you to fix for the next lap. Blah blah blah. Because that's effectively all we do. It's just like massive cognitive load. So yeah, a little bit too slow, but because you came out of the previous corner, which is the previous corner slow. So just trail the brake, look through the corner, and drive it off to a little bit slow so you can brake a bit lighter. Patience on the throttle there. Brake earlier, because you're a bit too quick.
Yeah. That's like what you said about depending on where you're sitting in the car.
Yep.
Like the field of view setting is different.
Yep.
I thought I was under the sign there.
Cool. And again, so first sector was really good last time, so just repeat it. So eyes at turn 2, eyes at turn 3. So remember, you'll have a big lift, and then you can go earlier. Go, commit.
I wasn't sure how much runoff you'd get before you get invalidated lap.
It's alright, learn it. So see how you're back on the throttle before you've seen the exit, and then you're going to have a snap and a little bit of understeer. So roll the car more, be patient. That's it, and start to accelerate and open the wheel. Cool, that was a little bit early on my side, but that's fine. That's effectively what you wanted to do. So brake earlier here, eyes forward. Patience. Wait till you see that exit a bit more. Just a bit messy because you touch the curb, that's cool.
Yeah, it feels like the difference is you feel like you're fighting the car rather than it working with you.
Yeah. Reference point. Turn it in. Wait, and now exit when you see the yellow. Yeah, so just a little bit of unnecessary throttle. A little bit lighter on the brakes here. Not later, lighter. So you roll a bit more speed and then you go, open the wheel. Use second gear there, I think you're third.
Yeah.
Cool. Brake under sign. That's it. And go. Use a bit more road, so don't be afraid to put those left wheels like right over the yellow sausage to open up the last corner. Cool. Good job. And so same again, and just clean up those same little bits.
Yeah. Let's get a good one. Let's get a 147.
Nah, it's alright. Just chip away. That's it. Cut. Drive it up. So have big lifts, patience, and now go. And commit to it. Cool. So you got plenty of road on the left, which means you can carry more throttle. So same brake marker, but lighter on the brakes, push you longer into the corner. Turn in earlier too. You focus on brake marker, so you're not focused on eyes up. That's cool. Patience, and now start to go. Look for the orange marker on the right. That's a really good one.
It's almost like the A pillar is blocking it there.
Yeah. So brake, turn it in. A little bit late. So see how you're a bit rushed on the way in. Want it to be like a little bit calmer on entry. And go. That's perfect. Relax your hands on the wheel. Like,
Good reference one.
turn it in, roll, and drive it off at the yellow sausage. Just watch where you're braking. Make sure you're right on the outside of the car. Start to crack the throttle. Open the wheel. Open the wheel. Open the wheel. Open the wheel. There you go. Turn in earlier here. Good. Yeah. You'll get the feeling of like looking forward there and not hitting those curves. Yeah. I'd say like you're probably hitting them because you are looking at them, so looking past them sort of helps that a bit. Just make sure all your brake points, you're like right on the white line on the left, like you tend to be a couple of meters off it, which makes the corner a bit sharper. That's it, don't rush back to the throttle, you don't need to. That's it, and go. So basically as soon as you brake here, start to turn in, like eyes on the apex. That's it, roll and squeeze through now. Use all the road. You can get on throttle a tiny bit earlier, but that's perfect. It's a little bit on the late side of the brake.
I don't really have a good reference point for that corner.
There isn't one, which is why this is a fucking awesome track. Same there, like different reference point there, turned in too early, brake too late, so see how all up the hill now is dead because you kind of killed that entry. So again, like, don't be afraid to brake earlier, relax the entry and fucking murder the exit. That's it, trail off now and drive it off the corner. Cool, that's much better. And nice and light on the brakes through here again. You brake a little bit later. Stay on the brakes so you keep it pinned on that apex. You lose a bit when you kind of get lazy and let it drift out wide there. That's it.
I hate going over those. It's so uncomfortable with this movement.
You just gotta like blend the speed. At the moment it's a combination of like a bit too fast, a bit too slow. You just kind of gotta get a good, better feeling for like the flow there. And then it'll kind of naturally come to you a bit better. Okay, be patient. No throttle, no throttle. Yeah, you need to do more braking on the way in. You're trying to really throw it into the corner.
Can you go right out to that, or do you not need to?
You know, you shouldn't need to. Not an F1 car won't. It won't cop that kind of dynamic transition. It, trail off and start to blend on the throttle now. Open the wheel, open the wheel, open the wheel so you don't get that oversteer. There you go. That's it, easy, and drive it off. So you still had eyes down, and that's why you didn't use up all the road there.
I'm still looking for that orange marker on the end. I know where it is when I can see it, but when I can't see it.
Look for the green, just look for the track. If the marker's like not the right thing, just look at the track. Like when you see the green on exit, go for it. Same here, like look at, once you get over the crest and you see the green, look at it and drive it, open the wheel there. It's got to be on the late side. You see what I mean about consistency?
Yeah.
Like that's been really good for the last 2-3 laps. The moment you kind of drop and you're not kind of being consistent there, then it
takes
murders the whole lap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Just brake a fraction earlier. Just kind of like all those little oversteers on entry and stuff are just rushing the entry when you don't really need to. Patience on the throttle. If you have to get back on the throttle too early, it just means you braked a bit too early as well. Again, see how much more road you got on the exit, so you can get on the throttle earlier. So just like get a better feeling for that flow of speed. That's it. Crank to the throttle, open the wheel, open the wheel, open the wheel. Keep your eyes up to where you want to go. That's better. That's it. Now open the wheel and go. So again, like even there where you're much wider, you still came out in the middle of the road. So that's just, it's all eyes. Brake earlier, roll and go. Minus that bit of oversteer, like off the curb. It's just because you came from a low speed with lots of throttle. A little bit more speed through there next time. Same there, like roll a little bit more speed.
It's just got to shit.
Natural, because you started thinking about it too much. Cool, stop it there, and just jump back into the pits, have a breather, and then we'll go again for like another 2-3 laps.
Okay.
Finish off, but see the difference, like at the start it was just flowing and you had like all your reference points, you had those visual bits, and then you're trying to force it and you're like fucking braking and like turn, and everything's like real aggressive, and it just like how quickly like it can go really bad. So even though like if you look at the, like if you go time, I hate this timetable. What's a timetable?
We're all at school, that's why.
Yes, I mean like who
Yeah.
who goes through a timing screen to look at a timetable? So anyway, so if you have a look at like those lists of laps, right? So none of the sectors are any good. Like you never had your best sectors or anything together. The 48.5 wasn't too bad, to be fair, but it wasn't great either. But see, like the consistency of laps is really poor. Why? Because you're trying stuff, like you're trying to string different bits and pieces together. So it's natural that nothing's going to come together right. But see how like as soon as you start to try harder, like lose a bit of time, lose a lot of time, lots of bigger mistakes. And when you're just kind of chipping away and you're just like rolling a bit too much speed or braking just a fraction too late, you know, there are a lot of mistakes there, but it's kind of maybe like a few tenths here and there. When you really try, it's like seconds difference. So it's got to like, the feeling has to come really natural, and you have to kind of build that flow and that feeling on your own. And so yeah, that's sort of what that's what you're looking for. And I know it's a lot in a short space of time, and that's kind of unfortunately kind of is what it is.
Yeah.
And you will take, while you're trying different stuff and whatnot, you will take 2 steps back before you take 3 steps forward, for instance. But you actually kind of got it there for a second, like, it was consistent. But that's the main point. Like, you have to stay consistent, keep those reference points, feel that flow, use all the road, and then that's when the lap time will naturally come. Like, for a second there, I didn't think you were far off cracking 47s on this setup, which would have been the GOs. So
how
that's.
would it be easier to get a 47 on the CDA setup pack?
It should do, yeah. It should be like 2 seconds like faster. So that's why, like, I always kind of like to just keep using this, because it is shit. So you know that next time you use a CD setup, like, you've just got like a little bit more grip in your back pocket. But you have to learn how to use that grip too. You know what I mean? You can't just kind of crank out a random. You can't just crank out a random lap if you don't know how to get the most out of it.
Key, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like, funnily enough, like the laps where you were following me and we were doing that I stuff, you already did a 48.0. So now it's just kind of doing that on your own, and then kind of building past that and finding like that little bit extra. So like, being able to kind of do what you did when you were following me, but having your own eyesight reference points and bits and pieces like that. Like, when you're racing, you'll find it's probably, like, for you, like, it's always easier to follow someone when you're racing, and you tend to maybe be faster when you're chasing someone. Why? Because you see what they're doing and you position the car in the same way, and then everything kind of comes. But then if you go and do a quali lap by yourself, maybe your quali lap's a second off what you do in the race, for instance.
If they make a mistake, then I make a mistake.
You make a mistake, yeah, exactly. I'm taking a wild guess, but normally I'm pretty spot on with that. So so yeah, what we'll do now is go out, and because we started a bit late, so just go out and do like another couple of laps. And just, for me, the main thing is for you to kind of relax and do the lap time again. Not necessarily, again, not focus on the lap time. The lap time's the end result of what you're doing, but more so just kind of get you back driving properly like you were, and then it's much easier to kind of build up from there again. Cool. Come back to having that proper lift, let the car rotate, and then go. Eyes up, patience, and then driving off. So just a little bit early. So you can either try braking later or trailing off the brake a little bit earlier to roll that extra speed. Same there, just a bit over braked. Just thinking about it a bit too much.
Yeah.
Try and make it a bit more natural.
I think you said softer on the brake.
Yeah, soft, lighter, not later, is
Yeah.
one of my favourite sayings. Braking earlier, like, gives you the ability to control the platform, but braking lighter, maybe not all the way lighter, but at least a certain part of the brake zone allows you to roll the speed you want from braking later, so you kind of get the best of both worlds, a calm platform and the speed in the middle of the corner. That's it, trail off, roll, and then drive it off the exit. There you go. Just get away from that. Lift proper, and then go. Go, 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 go. Cool. Same brake point, just brake frag lighter and keep it locked on that apex. Or the curb, sorry. And go. Squeeze and over the wheel. Nice. Don't brake too late here. Not too early either. And drive it off. Use it all the way to the green. There you go. That's much better. Same here. Lighter, not later. To control, drive off the corner. Much better. Good work with that. And go. A little bit early, sorry, that's shit call for me. That's it. Roll, drive it off. Lock it on the apex. Yeah, that was like a bit reactive.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's it. Don't be reactive. Patience and go. Yeah, well, exit wasn't like super set up, but it was alright.
I was trying to avoid looking at them and looking at the next
Yeah, no, it was like you styled it all well. It was just you got what you wanted to achieve, but you just kind of rolled in a bit too quick, so the middle bit was a bit messy. That's all. That's it. Roll, then drive off. Frag late. Make the most of it though. So lift and go. Nice. Repeat what you did here last time. Just try and keep it locked on the inside. So a little bit later than last time here. Just watch the draw use in the middle of the corner. What you did through here last time was perfect. Just try and repeat that. Yeah, see on the throttle, you had two like really small like on the throttle, and it just pushed you wide. Otherwise, you spot on. Just stop it there and jump back. So I think it'd be
the steering's knackered.
crooked. But again, like see how using those reference points, like that lap time was like real easy to repeat, like right from the word go. Like you went straight back to that 48.5 with improvements still to be made. Like you still made like a couple of mistakes where we ran off the track completely and lost like half a second, you know what I mean? So that's where and why using reference points makes what you're doing like really accessible to kind of like get back to that level. So every time you leave the pits, you go bang, like that's your level, and then you build on it. And then the next, once that's kind of your new kind of starting point, once you get all those references right. And so then your new starting point's like a 48, and then once you kind of build on that a little bit more, then your new starting point can be there because you've got all those references, all those break markers in your mind, and you know exactly how to achieve it. Obviously when you're fighting to kind of get lap time at the start, it feels really messy, but what you just have to do in your mind is kind of take a step back and kind of relax a little bit more, allow it to come like a bit more naturally, a bit less forced, a bit less reactive, a bit more proactive, and then in general it'll just like start to come back to you a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Less fighting it.
Yeah, exactly. So like as a reference, you should be able to go another like 3 or 4 tenths faster in the first sector, maybe another couple of tenths in the middle, and the last sector you should be able to do like a 5 something, and that should comfortably put you around the, well actually I'm pretty sure I did a 56, not a 46.
Yours is 146.7.
Yeah, a 5.51. So that's where 29.9, 40.8, and a 35.1. Yeah. So yeah, there's the last sector is the big improvement for you, and that's just kind of flow and like stringing together that lap. Like your fastest final sector is like a 6.3, I think. Yeah. And I'm looking through some of the 5.8, sorry, but there's still like half a second in that, and just kind of like flowing it all together, and that'll kind of get you to kind of effectively a step forward of where you want to go on a shoot setup, and then hopefully you'll find a little bit more from there. But like even on this setup, like I could probably still do a high 43, 44. So there's room for improvement even on a baseline setup, right? So what I'm going to do now is flick you through like just kind of the basic stuff that we spoke about now. And like really just like the real basic points. So it's super simple and clean. So the 3 rules, it's 2.5 rules. And then like the 4 bits that we kind of smashed on about, in terms of like what helps you kind of take that next step. And then so from my side, like what you need to work on is that bit more consistency with the reference points, those sorts of bits and pieces. And then from there you're able to kind of chip away a little bit more at general lap time, but you can only do that once you start to build that consistency. I mean, that lap time for me was already there if you strung the lap, but it's the driving that finishes the lap time, not the lap time that sorts the driving, if that makes sense. So focus on the driving, the lap time will come for free. Okay. Cool. Any questions for me before I bounce, or anything that you kind of want to explain a little bit differently or better, or whatever it could be?
That was all. It all made sense. I think it's, like you say, it's a case of stringing it all together, and for each track finding those reference points and making sure that my eyes are up. I think that's the biggest problem, is I'm, as you've said, reacting to what's immediately in front of me instead of looking ahead at what I need to be looking ahead at.
Yeah, exactly. It'll come with time. Like I said, it's developed, not like it's learned, not like born with to an extent. So yeah, like don't be afraid to kind of like take a step back and chip away at a few things and whatnot, before it like sort of clicks. But when it does click, it'll just be like, fuck, that was easy. And when you get that point, when you get that feeling, that's sort of, then like, oh wow, like I just kind of like rolled the car through the corner, did what I wanted, and I got lap time for free. That's kind of what you're looking for. You'll know when it clicks, and if it doesn't click, then we try again, and try and break that glass ceiling a different way. Like I said, there's lots of different ways to skin a cat, but I don't think it'll take long. Like, you're not going to learn it in an hour. I don't expect you to. You got to take it away and kind of chip away at it a little bit more. Most of the guys message me like 2-3 weeks later and go, fuck it, it finally clicked. And I'm like, beautiful. Yeah. So, all good.
Brilliant.
All right. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate your time.
Cheers for your time.
No worries. I'll speak to you soon.
Take care. Bye.
See you, mate. Bye.